My name is Evelina Dorsey, and the day my daughter left me to die in the Mojave Desert, I was wearing the blue cardigan she gave me for Christmas. That cardigan was soaked through with sweat when I collapsed face first into the burning sand, my lips cracked and bleeding, whispering her name like a prayer she'd never answer. Let me tell you something about betrayal. It doesn't announce itself with thunder and lightning. It comes wrapped in sweetness, delivered by the hands you trust most, and by the time you realize what's happening, you're already 50 miles from nowhere with vultures circling overhead. You need to understand how I got there. How a 68-year-old woman who spent her whole life believing in goodness ended up crawling through the desert, watching her own daughter's taillights disappear into the horizon. Would you survive if someone you loved more than breathing tried to erase you from existence? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. The morning started normal enough. Clarice called at 8, her voice dripping with honey. "Mama," she said, and I should have known right there. She hadn't called me Mama in 3 years. "I want to take you somewhere special. Just you and me." I wanted to believe those days weren't completely dead. That's the thing about mothers. We're experts at lying to ourselves when it comes to our children. "What's the occasion?" I asked. "Does there need to be one? Can't a daughter just want to spend time with her mother?" She arrived at 10, driving that fancy white SUV. We drove for over an hour. The buildings got smaller, then disappeared. The Mojave stretched out on both sides like God had forgotten to finish it. "Clarice, honey, where exactly are we headed?" "I told you. It's a surprise." Something in her jaw was set too tight. Another hour passed. The sun climbed higher, turning the world into a furnace. "This is pretty far for a surprise." She didn't answer. That's when the first real thread of fear wound itself around my heart. She turned onto a dirt road that looked like it hadn't seen a car in years. Then she stopped. Right in the middle of nothing. "We're here," she said. I looked around. There was nothing but sand and scrub brush and silence so deep it hurt your ears. "Here where?" She snatched my phone from my lap and got out. She yanked my door open. Her face was different. All the sweetness had melted away, leaving something cold and ugly underneath. "Get out." "What?" I said, "Get out." She grabbed my arm and pulled. "Honey, please, you're scaring me." "You did this to yourself, old woman. All you had to do was sign over Uncle Harold's land. But you had to be sentimental about that worthless piece of dirt." "The land? This is about Harold's property. There's lithium under that soil. Millions of dollars worth. Reynard's business is failing. We're drowning in debt. But you'd rather hold onto memories than help your own daughter. If you'd just talk to me." "I'm done talking." She threw my phone into the scrub brush. "You made your choice. Let's see if the vultures like you, old woman." She got back in the SUV. "Clarice." I ran toward the car. "Don't do this." She rolled down her window. "Maybe dying out here will teach you about priorities." Then she drove away. The dust settled. And I was alone. I stood there, legs shaking. My daughter had just left me to die. I started walking east. One foot in front of the other. The sand burning through my shoes. And with each step, something inside me changed. The woman who believed kindness could heal anything started to die in that desert. If I survived this, she would never forget this day. When she returned home that night, she'd find me waiting on her porch. And I would have a surprise for her too. Before my daughter became the kind of person who could leave her mother to die, she was my whole world. I raised Clarice alone after her father walked out when she was 3. He left on a Tuesday morning with nothing but a note that said, I can't do this anymore. No explanation. No goodbye kiss for his baby girl. Just gone. We lived in a cramped apartment above a laundromat in Barstow. The smell of detergent and hot fabric soaked into everything we owned. At night, I'd work as a school janitor, mopping floors and emptying trash cans while Clarice slept at my sister's house. During the day, I'd clean motel rooms, scrubbing toilets and changing sheets stained with things I tried not to think about. Every penny I earned went into her future. Her books. Her clothes. The field trips I'd save for months to afford. I'd eat crackers for dinner so she could have chicken. I'd wear shoes with holes in them so hers could be new. She was smart. Top of her class every year. Teachers said she was special, destined for great things. I'd sit in those parent conferences with my calloused hands folded in my lap, listening to them talk about college scholarships and bright futures, and I'd feel something close to pride swell in my chest. This was what I'd worked for. This was why the exhaustion and the aching back and the loneliness were worth it. Have you ever sacrificed everything for someone, only to watch them forget where they came from? I used to dream she'd become a lawyer or a teacher. Someone who'd lift us both out of the dust and struggle. She did go far. Full scholarship to college. Graduated with honors. Got a good job at a consulting firm in the city. Then she met Reynard. The first time she brought him home, I knew something was wrong. He had the kind of smile that looked practiced in a mirror. Teeth too white. Handshake too firm. Eyes that looked through me instead of at me. Mrs. Dorsey, he said, but it sounded like he was saying, servant. Call me Evelina, I told him. Reynard's family owns 3 car dealerships, Clarice said, her voice bright with something that wasn't quite happiness. More like relief. Like she'd finally found her ticket out. They got married 6 months later. Big wedding at a country club I'd never heard of. I wore the only dress I owned, a navy blue thing from a thrift store. In the photos, I looked like someone's cleaning lady who'd wandered into the shot by mistake. Clarice looked beautiful though. Radiant. And for a moment, watching her walk down that aisle, I forgot about the credit card debt I'd racked up to pay for her bridal shower. I forgot about the way she'd corrected my grammar in front of Reynard's parents. I forgot everything except the fact that my baby girl was happy. Or so I thought. The changes started small. She stopped calling as much. When she did call, conversations were short and felt obligatory. Just checking in, Mother. I'm very busy. Talk soon. Mother. Not Mama anymore. Then came the dinner party. She invited me to their new house, this massive thing with columns and a 3-car garage. I brought a homemade casserole because that's what I knew how to do. When I handed it to her at the door, she looked at it like I'd brought a dead animal. Oh, how thoughtful. She set it on a counter and never mentioned it again. I met her new friends that night. Women in designer dresses who talked about renovations and vacation homes. Men who wore watches that cost more than I made in a year. They asked what I did, and when I said I was retired, they nodded politely and moved on to more interesting conversations. I needed the bathroom. When I came back, I heard Clarice's voice from the kitchen. She was talking to one of her friends, and she didn't know I was there. God, I love her, but she's so embarrassing sometimes, Clarice said. Did you see those shoes? I keep trying to take her shopping, but she insists on buying everything at Walmart. Her friend laughed. At least she showed up. My mother-in-law wears sweatpants to everything. I just wish she'd try a little harder. Is that terrible? My hand found the wall to steady myself. I stood there in the hallway, listening to my daughter wish I was someone else. Someone better. Someone worth less shame. I left early that night, claiming a headache. Clarice barely noticed. That night, I prayed. I prayed that money wouldn't eat my daughter's soul. I prayed that somewhere under all that new polish and pretension, my little girl still existed. But I was too late. The daughter I'd raised was already gone, replaced by someone who measured worth in dollar signs and social status. Do you think money changes people, or just reveals who they really were all along? The distance between us grew wider every month, like a crack in the earth that nobody wanted to acknowledge. Clarice's calls became even less frequent. Holidays were spent at Reynard's parents' house, where I was invited but made to feel like an afterthought. Christmas cards arrived with generic messages and no personal note. Her voice on the phone sounded more and more like a stranger's. I tried to bridge the gap. I really did. I'd call with little stories about the neighborhood, about Mrs. Chen's new grandbaby or the stray cat I'd been feeding. She'd listen with half her attention, and I could hear her typing in the background. "That's nice, Mother. Listen, I have a meeting." Always a meeting. Always something more important than me. Then Reynard's business started having problems. I didn't know the details, but I could hear the stress in Clarice's voice when she called. Money was tight, she said. They'd had to let their housekeeper go. Cancel their country club membership. Little sacrifices that felt enormous to people who'd never really struggled. I wanted to help, but what could I offer? My monthly Social Security check barely covered my own bills. That's when Uncle Harold died. Harold was my older brother, 10 years my senior. He'd never married, never had kids. Spent his whole life working odd jobs and living in a trailer on a piece of land he'd bought decades ago. Everyone thought he was a bit crazy, collecting rocks and digging holes in the desert like he was searching for buried treasure. When the lawyer called to tell me Harold had left me everything, I didn't expect much. The trailer was falling apart. The land was in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by scrub brush and sand. It's not worth much, the lawyer said. Maybe enough to cover his final expenses if you sell it. I drove out there once, after the funeral. Stood on that dusty plot of land and cried for the brother who'd always been kind to me, even when he had nothing to give. Harold used to say the desert held secrets. That if you listened close enough, the land would tell you its stories. I didn't plan to sell it. Not right away. It felt wrong, like erasing the last trace of him. But then Clarice found out about the inheritance. Suddenly, my phone started ringing again. Suddenly, she had time for long conversations. Suddenly, I was Mama again instead of Mother. I'm so sorry about Uncle Harold, she said, her voice thick with manufactured sympathy. He was such a character. You must miss him terribly. I do, I said. So, what are you going to do with the property? There it was. The real reason for the call. I haven't decided yet. Well, you shouldn't hold on to it if it's just sitting there. Reynard knows some real estate people who could help you get a fair price. I'll think about it. After that, she started visiting. Every weekend, she'd show up with fruit baskets and store-bought cookies. She'd hug me at the door and call me Mama and ask about my week like she actually cared. I wanted so badly to believe it was real. That my daughter had finally remembered she had a mother who loved her. But mothers know their children's lies better than anyone. One Saturday evening, she came with Reynard. They sat in my living room, drinking the lemonade I'd made, making small talk. When I excused myself to use the bathroom, I heard their voices through the thin walls. She's still not agreeing, Clarice hissed. Then push harder, Reynard said. We need that money. The bank is breathing down my neck. She's sentimental about it. Says it reminds her of Harold. Who cares about Harold? He was a crazy old hermit. That land is worthless except for what's under it. My hand froze on the bathroom door handle. What do you mean, what's under it? I had a guy check the geological surveys. There's lithium in that area. Tech companies are buying up every deposit they can find. That worthless piece of dirt could be worth millions. Silence. Then Clarice's voice, quieter now. Millions. If she signs it over to you, we can sell it before anyone else figures it out. But she has to do it soon. She'll never agree if she knows the truth. She'll want to keep it or donate it or some other stupid thing. Then don't tell her the truth. Tell her you need the money for medical bills. Make something up. I don't care. Just get her signature. I stood there in my tiny bathroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The old woman looking back at me had believed in goodness. Had believed that love could overcome greed. That woman was a fool. I flushed the toilet and washed my hands, taking my time. When I came back out, they were both smiling at me. Everything okay, Mama? Clarice asked. Just fine, sweetheart, I said, and poured more lemonade with steady hands. That night, after they left, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat in the dark and planned. I smiled and poured more tea, though I'd already started planning my own kind of justice. Would you stay quiet if your own child plotted against you? The next few weeks, I played my part perfectly. When Clarice called asking about the land, I'd sigh and say I was still thinking. When she visited with more fruit baskets and fake smiles, I'd thank her and hug her and pretend I didn't know she was counting down the days until my signature was on a deed transfer. But behind the scenes, I was learning. I called the county office and asked about the land. They sent me reports and surveys. I didn't understand most of it, but I understood enough. Uncle Harold's property sat right on top of something valuable. Then I found Harold's journals in a box at the back of my closet. He'd left them to me along with everything else, and I'd never bothered to look through them. Page after page of his cramped handwriting, talking about rock formations and mineral deposits and something called lithium carbonate. One entry, dated 3 months before he died, stopped me cold. Evie, if you're reading this, I'm gone. The land is yours now. Don't let anyone take it from you. There's wealth under that dirt, enough to change your life. But be careful who you trust. Family will smile while they rob you blind. I learned that the hard way. My hands shook as I turned the page. He'd drawn a map. Detailed notes about where to dig, what to look for. Names of geologists and mining consultants he'd contacted. One name appeared multiple times, Elroy Gaines. I found Mr. Gaines' number in Harold's address book and called him the next morning. Gaines Geological Consulting, a gruff voice answered. Mr. Gaines, my name is Evelina Dorsey. My brother Harold left me some property, and I think you knew him. Silence. Then, Harold Dorsey? I'm sorry for your loss. He was a smart man. One of the few people who understood what that land was worth. Can you tell me exactly what it's worth? Have you had it surveyed recently? No. Then I suggest you do. And Mrs. Dorsey? Don't sign anything until you talk to me first. Your brother made me promise I'd look out for you if anything happened to him. We set up a meeting for the following week. Meanwhile, Clarice's visits became more frequent, more urgent. She started bringing up the land every conversation, pushing harder each time. Mama, I hate to pressure you, but Reynard and I are in a really tight spot financially. If you could just sell the land and maybe help us out a little. How much do you need? I asked. Her eyes lit up. Well, if you sold it for even 50,000, that would. 50,000? I kept my face neutral. You think Harold's land is worth that much? Oh, at least. Maybe more. Reynard's real estate friend thinks he could get you a good price. I bet he does, I said quietly. What? Nothing, dear. I said that sounds nice. She smiled, thinking she'd won. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The one who'd make me cards on Mother's Day with crayon hearts and promises to love me forever. Where did that girl go? When did she become someone who could look me in the eye and lie? The meeting with Elroy Gaines changed everything. He drove out to Harold's property with equipment I didn't understand. Took samples. Made notes. 3 days later, he called me with results. "Mrs. Dorsey, I'm going to be straight with you. Your brother was sitting on a fortune. The lithium deposits under that land are extensive. With current market prices, you're looking at mineral rights worth anywhere from $3 to $5 million. The room spun. Million. That's conservative. Could be more if demand keeps rising. Tech companies are desperate for lithium. Electric car batteries, phones, computers. It's the new gold rush. My daughter thinks it's worth $50,000. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your daughter's trying to rob you, ma'am. I'm sorry to put it that bluntly. I wasn't sorry. I was furious. Not the hot, explosive kind of anger. The cold, calculating kind that settles in your bones and waits. What do I need to do to protect this? I asked. First, put the deed in a trust under your name only. Second, get a lawyer. Third, don't tell anyone what you know. Not yet. Not even family. Especially not family. I followed his advice. Got everything legally protected. Made sure Clarice's name was nowhere on any documents. And I waited. 2 weeks later, Clarice showed up with papers. "Mama, I had Reynard's lawyer draw up a simple transfer. You sign here, and we can handle selling the property for you. You won't have to worry about any of it." I looked at the papers. At my daughter's eager face. At the pen she held out to me. "Where does it say how much the land is worth?" I asked. "Oh, we'll figure that out after." "And where does it say what percentage I'd get from the sale?" She blinked. "Percentage? Mama, it would all be yours. We'd just handle the transaction." "For a small fee, I assume." "Well, yes, there are always costs involved." "How much were you planning to tell me it sold for, Clarice?" Her smile faltered. "What kind of question is that?" I set the papers down. "I think you should leave now." "Mama, I don't understand." "Yes, you do." I stood up, my voice steady. "You understand perfectly. Now get out of my house." She left, slamming the door behind her. Through the window, I watched her make a phone call. Probably to Reynard. Probably planning their next move. I smiled and poured myself tea, though I'd already started planning my own kind of justice. Would you confront them immediately, or let them wonder what you know? Clarice didn't call for 3 days after I refused to sign her papers. When she finally did, her voice had lost all its sweetness. "Mother, we need to talk." "About what?" "About your attitude. I'm trying to help you, and you're being difficult." "Difficult," I repeated. "That's an interesting word." "Reynard says you're not thinking clearly. That maybe at your age, you shouldn't be making big decisions alone." There it was. The threat wrapped in concern. She was suggesting I wasn't mentally competent. "Tell Reynard I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years," I said, and hung up. After that, the calls stopped completely. So did the visits. The fruit baskets. The fake affection. It was like someone had flipped a switch, and my daughter simply disappeared from my life. Part of me mourned. The mother in me who still remembered rocking her to sleep. But another part, the part that had been forged in betrayal, felt only relief. I spent those weeks finalizing everything with Elroy Gaines. We contacted mining companies, negotiated contracts. I sold partial rights to the lithium deposits for an upfront payment of $2 million, with royalties on future extraction. When the check arrived, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at it for an hour. More money than I'd seen in my entire life. More than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes of cleaning toilets and mopping floors. Harold had left me salvation, and Clarice had tried to steal it. Then, on a Wednesday morning, she called again. "Mama." Her voice was soft. Broken. "Please. I need to see you. Just once. I want to talk. Really talk." Every instinct screamed that it was a trap. But maybe, I thought, she'd finally realized what she'd done. Maybe she wanted to apologize. Hope is a stubborn, stupid thing. "All right," I said. "When?" "Today. I'll pick you up at 10. Let's go for a drive. Clear the air. Just you and me." Those words should have warned me. Instead, I put on my blue cardigan and waited by the door like a fool. She arrived exactly on time. The white SUV gleamed in the morning sun. When I climbed in, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Ready, Mama?" We drove in silence for the first hour. I kept waiting for her to start the conversation, to explain why we were heading out of town. Instead, she just drove, her jaw set, her hands tight on the wheel. "Clarice, where are we going?" "Somewhere we can talk without interruptions." Another hour passed. The buildings disappeared. The desert rose up around us, endless and hostile. "This is pretty far just to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't respond. That's when I knew. Deep in my gut, I knew this wasn't about talking. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about removing an obstacle. "Clarice, honey, please. Whatever you're thinking." "I'm thinking," she said, her voice flat, "that you've made everything very complicated. Reynard and I need that land. We're losing everything. The house, the cars, everything we've built. And you're sitting on millions, being selfish. If you just asked me honestly." "I did ask. I begged. And you said no." Her voice rose, sharp and desperate. "Do you know what Reynard will do if we lose everything? He'll leave me. Just like Dad left you. And I'll end up exactly where I started, living in some dump above a laundromat, smelling like other people's dirty clothes. Clarice, please, just stop the car." But she didn't stop. She sped up, driving deeper into the wasteland. What would you do if someone you loved tried to erase you from existence? When she finally stopped the car in that desolate stretch of nothing, when she ripped my phone from my hands and shoved me out onto the burning sand, I realized something terrible. I'd spent my whole life sacrificing for a daughter who saw me as nothing more than a means to an end. An obstacle between her and the life she thought she deserved. And as her taillights disappeared into the dust, as the desert silence pressed in around me, I whispered a promise to the merciless sky. If I survived this, she would never forget this day. When she returned home that night, expecting me to be bones bleaching in the sun, she'd find me waiting on her porch. And I would have a surprise for her too. The Mojave Desert doesn't care if you're innocent or guilty. It doesn't care if you've been wronged or if you deserve mercy. It just takes and takes until there's nothing left. I walked for hours after Clarice abandoned me. East, because the sun was setting behind me and I figured civilization had to be somewhere ahead. My shoes weren't made for this. Thin canvas that let every rock and thorn pierce through. Within the first mile, my feet were bleeding. The heat was the worst part. It wasn't just hot. It was angry. Violent. Like the air itself wanted to punish me for being there. Sweat soaked through my cardigan until it clung to my skin. My throat turned to sandpaper. My lips cracked and bled. I thought about lying down. Just stopping. Letting the desert have me like Clarice intended. But then I'd see her face in my mind. That cold smile as she drove away. That laugh. And anger would push me forward another 100 feet. Do you believe pain can turn into power? When the sun finally set, the temperature dropped like a stone. I was shivering within minutes, my sweat-soaked clothes turning ice cold against my skin. The desert that tried to cook me alive now wanted to freeze me to death. I kept walking anyway, stumbling over rocks I couldn't see, my legs shaking with exhaustion. That's when I started seeing things. Harold appeared in front of me, solid as life, pointing towards something in the darkness. I knew it wasn't real. But I followed anyway because what else did I have? My foot hit something hard. I fell, my hands scraping against wood. A structure. Some kind of building. I crawled toward it on my hands and knees, too exhausted to stand. Found a door hanging crooked on its hinges. Pushed through into darkness that smelled like dust and time. I collapsed on the floor and didn't move for hours. When dawn light filtered through the cracks in the walls, I finally looked around. It was a shack. Tiny. Ancient. Like someone had built it and then forgotten it existed. But there was a barrel in the corner. I crawled to it, pulled off the lid, and nearly cried. Water. Stale and warm, but water. I drank until my stomach hurt, then drank more. Only after I'd finished half the barrel did I notice the papers on the wall. A map, yellowed with age, covered in Harold's handwriting. I recognized those loops and curves immediately. He'd been here. My brother had found this place. The map showed the property lines of his land, with sections marked and labeled. Lithium deposits. High-grade samples. Mining potential, significant. Harold had known. He'd known exactly what was under that dirt. And he'd documented everything. At the bottom of the map, in larger letters, he'd written, "Evie, if you're reading this, don't trust anyone. Family will smile while they rob you blind. Protect what's yours." I sat there on that dusty floor, reading my dead brother's warning, and something inside me crystallized. The old Evelina, the one who believed in forgiveness and second chances, died in that shack. The woman who stood up was made of steel and silence. Clarice wanted me gone. Fine. She'd get her wish. The mother she threw away would never come back. But someone else would return in her place. When I walked out of that desert, I left my weakness buried in the sand. A truck driver named Byron Tate found me on the highway 2 days later. I must have looked like something out of a nightmare. Sunburned, limping, my cardigan torn and filthy. He pulled over immediately, jumped out, and rushed toward me. "Ma'am, are you all right? What happened?" "I got lost," I said. "Simple. Clean. I need a ride home." He gave me water, a blanket, and a protein bar. Didn't ask too many questions, thank God. Just drove me back to Barstow while talking about his daughter who was studying to be a nurse. Good people still exist. I needed to remember that. When he dropped me off at my house, it was late afternoon. Clarice's white SUV was parked in my driveway. My heart should have raced. My hands should have shaken. Instead, I felt nothing but cold certainty. Byron noticed my hesitation. "That your family's car?" "My daughter's," I said. "Want me to wait? Make sure everything's okay." "No, thank you. You've been kind enough." I walked up to my porch slowly, listening. Voices inside. Clarice and 2 neighbors, Mrs. Patterson and her husband Earl. "I'm just so worried," Clarice was saying, her voice thick with fake tears. "She wandered off 2 days ago. I've been searching everywhere. She's been so confused lately. I think it might be dementia." Dementia. She was already building her story, preparing everyone to believe I was incompetent. I opened the door. The talking stopped. 3 faces turned toward me. Clarice's went white. "Mama," she whispered. Mrs. Patterson rushed over. "Evelina, thank God. Where have you been? Clarice said you wandered off." "Did she?" I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. "That's interesting." "We were so worried," Clarice said, standing up trying to hug me. I stepped back. "Don't touch me." The room went silent. Earl and Mrs. Patterson exchanged confused glances. "Mama, you're not making sense. You must be dehydrated. Let me get you some water." I said, "Don't touch me." My voice was quiet but sharp as broken glass. "Evelina, honey, maybe you should sit down," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "You've had quite an ordeal." "I didn't wander off," I said clearly. "I was taken somewhere and left." Clarice's face rearranged itself into concern. "Mama, that's the confusion talking. Nobody took you anywhere. You left by yourself. I came to visit and you were gone." "Liar." "Evelina." Mrs. Patterson looked shocked. But I kept my eyes on Clarice. "I have a surprise for you, sweetheart. But not today. Today I'm tired. Today I need to rest. So please leave my house." "But we need to make sure you're—" "Leave." After they'd gone, after I'd locked the door and drawn the curtains, I finally allowed myself to shake. To feel the terror I'd been holding back. To realize how close I'd come to dying in that desert. Then I took a shower, ate some soup, and started making phone calls. First to Elroy Gaines. Then to a lawyer. Then to someone else Harold had mentioned in his journals, a private investigator named Marcus Webb. I had money now. Resources. And I had something more valuable than either. I had patience. Would you confront them immediately, or let them wonder what you know? The next 3 months, I moved in silence. Marcus Webb was a thin man in his 50s who looked like he'd heard every ugly story the world had to offer. When I told him what Clarice had done, he didn't look surprised. Just took notes and asked questions. "You want proof she left you there intentionally?" he asked. "I want everything. Her finances. Her husband's business troubles. Phone records. Everything that shows why she did it." "That's going to cost." "I have $2 million in the bank. Money isn't a problem anymore." He smiled for the first time. "Then let's bury them in evidence." While Marcus worked, I worked with Elroy to maximize the land's value. We negotiated with 3 different mining companies, playing them against each other until the offers tripled. I sold the mineral rights for $4.5 million. Put half in a trust. Kept the rest liquid for what came next. Meanwhile, Clarice tried calling. Leaving voicemails full of apologies and concern. "Mama, I'm so sorry about the other day. I was stressed and said things I didn't mean. Can we please talk?" I never answered. Just saved every message. Then Reynard's business collapsed. Marcus found out first and called me with the news. His main dealership filed for bankruptcy yesterday. IRS is investigating him for tax fraud. They're going to lose everything. "How long before they come to me?" I asked. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Perfect. I spent those weeks preparing, gathering documents, recording conversations, building a case that would hold up in court if it came to that. And watching. Always watching. I saw Clarice's social media posts go from vacation photos to nothing. Saw her friends stop commenting. Saw the house go up for sale. By the time she called begging to see me, I was ready. She showed up on a Tuesday morning with Reynard. Both of them looked like they hadn't slept in days. His expensive suit was wrinkled. Her makeup couldn't hide the circles under her eyes. "Mama," she said when I opened the door. "Please. We need to talk." I let them in. Made tea. Acted like the old Evelina who believed in forgiveness. "We're in trouble," Reynard said, not wasting time on pleasantries. "The business failed. The IRS is after us. We're going to lose the house." "I'm so sorry to hear that," I said. "Can you help us?" Clarissa's voice cracked. "Please? We're family." I took a sip of tea. Let the silence stretch. "Family," I repeated. "That's an interesting word coming from you." "What do you mean?" I stood up, went to the safe I'd had installed, and pulled out a folder. Set it on the table between us. "This is what family means to you." Clarisse opened it. Her hands started shaking as she read. Bank statements showing the lithium sale. The money in my account. The trust I'd established. "You sold it," she whispered. "I did. But you said you'd never." "I said I'd think about it. And I did. I thought about it a lot. Especially while I was dying in the desert." Reynard's eyes narrowed. "What desert?" "Ask your wife." The silence that followed was long and ugly. Clarisse couldn't look at him. "Clarisse." His voice was dangerous. "What is she talking about?" I didn't." "She's confused." I pulled out another paper. The police report I'd filed a week ago, detailing everything. The abandonment. The theft of my phone. The coordinates where it happened. "I'm not confused anymore," I said quietly. "I'm clearer than I've been in years." Ever seen karma arrive right on time? Tell your story below. Reynard stood up so fast his chair fell over. "You can't prove anything," he said, but his voice shook. "Actually, I can." I pulled out another document. "This is a transcript of the conversation you two had on my porch 3 months ago. The one where you planned to trick me into signing over Harold's land." Clarissa's face went gray. "You recorded us?" "Harold taught me something before he died. Trust, but verify. So I installed security cameras. Audio too. It's all legal in California as long as one party knows. And I knew." I spread more papers across the table. Phone records showing Clarissa's location that day. Gas station footage of her SUV heading into the desert. A statement from Byron Tate, the truck driver who found me. "The police have all of this," I said. "So does my lawyer. If anything happens to me, if I disappear or have an accident, it all becomes public. And you both go to prison." "You wouldn't," Clarisse whispered. "Wouldn't I?" "You left me to die, and then came back pretending to be worried. You called me confused. Said I had dementia. Tried to make everyone think I was incompetent so you could control my assets." Tears streamed down her face now. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was desperate." Reynard said we had no choice. "Don't you dare blame this on me," Reynard snarled at her. Then to me, "Fine. You win, old woman. You have your money. What do you want from us?" "I want you gone," I said simply. "Out of my house. Out of my life. I never want to see either of you again." "But Mama." "Don't call me that. You gave up that right when you watched me collapse in your rearview mirror." Reynard grabbed Clarissa's arm. "Let's go. This is a waste of time." But Clarisse pulled away from him. Fell to her knees in front of me. "Please. I'll do anything. I'll get help. I'll go to therapy. I'll make this right. Please don't give up on me." I looked down at her. At the daughter I'd raised. The child I'd sacrificed everything for. And I felt nothing but pity. You should have thought about that before you left me for the vultures, I said. Now get out of my house. She left sobbing. Reynard followed, his face twisted with rage. Through the window, I watched them get into their car. Watched them argue. Watched him hit the steering wheel hard enough to make the horn honk. 2 weeks later, Reynard was arrested for tax fraud and attempting to harm a senior citizen. Clarice filed for divorce and tried calling me again. I never answered. Would you still forgive, or let justice speak for itself? 6 months after Clarice left me in the desert, I opened the doors to Dorsey House, a community home for abandoned elders. It's a beautiful building on 3 acres. Comfortable rooms. A garden. A library. A place where people who've been thrown away by their families can live with dignity. Every wall bears a plaque that reads, "The desert doesn't forgive, but it reveals." We house 20 residents now. Each one has a story like mine. Children who disappeared. Families who forgot them. People who were told they were burdens and believed it until they found us. I walk through the halls every day, talking to them. Listening. Reminding them they have value beyond what they can give. Sometimes people ask if I've forgiven Clarice. The truth is complicated. She's tried reaching out dozens of times. Letters. Emails. Messages through friends. Last month, she showed up at the gate of Dorsey House, begging to see me. I watched her from my office window. Saw how thin she'd gotten. How the expensive clothes were gone, replaced with thrift store dresses like the ones I used to wear. Part of me wanted to go to her. The mother in me who remembers rocking her to sleep still exists, buried deep. But I didn't go. Because forgiveness without boundaries isn't mercy. It's suicide. She made her choice in that desert. And I made mine when I walked out of it alive. The money from Harold's land changed my life, yes. But what changed more was my understanding of what I deserve. Respect. Dignity. Love that doesn't come with conditions. I've built something here at Dorsey House that matters more than any inheritance. A place where people can heal from betrayal. Where they can remember their worth. Last week, a woman named Patricia arrived. 73 years old, left at a nursing home by her son who never visited. She sat in my office crying, saying she must have done something wrong to deserve abandonment. I held her hand and told her my story. About the daughter who left me to die. About crawling through the desert. About choosing to survive and build something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. Did you deserve what happened to you? She asked. No, I said. And neither did you. She's thriving here now. Found purpose helping in the garden. Made friends. Started smiling again. That's what justice looks like to me now. Not revenge. Not punishment. But creating something good where evil tried to take root. People often ask what the moral of my story is. I tell them this: never underestimate the strength of a silent heart. Betrayal may wound the spirit, but quiet justice heals it in ways revenge never could. The desert doesn't forgive, but it remembers. And so do I. I keep one photo of Clarice in my desk drawer. She's 6 years old, gap-toothed and laughing, her arms around my neck. Sometimes I look at it and remember that child existed once. But the woman who left me to die, I don't know her. And I never will again. That's not cruelty. That's survival. Last month, I received a letter from Clarice. Not asking for money this time. Just apologizing. Taking responsibility. Saying she understood if I never wanted to see her again, but that she needed me to know she was getting help. That she was sorry. That she loved me even though she'd lost the right to say it. I read it once. Then put it in the drawer with the photo. Maybe someday I'll respond. Maybe someday the wound will heal enough for me to speak to her without feeling the sun burning my skin and sand in my throat. But not today. Not yet. Today, I have 20 people depending on me. 20 souls who need to know that being discarded doesn't define their worth. The desert taught me that. When Clarice threw me away, I learned I was stronger than anyone knew. Strong enough to survive. Strong enough to build. Strong enough to choose myself. And sometimes, that's the greatest revenge of all. Not destroying the person who hurt you, but becoming so strong they can't hurt you anymore. The vultures didn't get me that day in the Mojave. Instead, I rose from that sand like a phoenix, carrying Harold's legacy and my own dignity in my burned hands. And I turned it all into something beautiful. That's the moral of my story. That's what I tell everyone who walks through these doors. The desert doesn't forgive, but it reveals. And what it revealed in me was strength I never knew existed. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that survival is possible even when the people who should love you most turn away, then share it. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another story of quiet justice and redemption. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me about a time you had to choose yourself over someone you loved. Your story might inspire someone else who's walking through their own desert right now. Remember, betrayal doesn't win. Silence and dignity do. And sometimes, the best revenge is building a life so beautiful that those who tried to destroy you can only watch from the outside, wondering how you survived. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this family. And remember, you are stronger than you know. Never let anyone convince you otherwise.